All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Ebony, a.k.a. Fit Mom Diva of Simplicity Health Style, and today we have Miss Alex with us. How are you, Alex?
I'm good. How are you?
I am awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to
Of course.
speak with us. You guys, she is going to deliver some awesome jewels, and if you stick around to the end, you might have an opportunity to get a complimentary gift. So stick around, see what she wants to share with us today. And she has a very, very similar mindset as myself, including one of her favorite Disney movies that I've talked about in some of my previous blogs, and I'll tell you guys about that later or at another time. But in the meantime, let's talk a little bit about your motivation. Tell us one motivational quote that really inspires you or gets you going.
All right. So I don't know, it's not necessarily a quote, but my favorite person in like all of history forever since like the first grade. So my big historical crush is, if you've seen Hamilton, you'll probably, or even heard the soundtrack, you'll know him. It's Marquis de Lafayette. And his family motto is, I studied French and Spanish, so I could be butchering this Latin for all I know. But his family motto is Latin, and it's Cur non, which means why not? And it's a pretty good philosophy to go about life in regardless. I mean, like, why not? Like, anything you're coming up against, why not just do it? So it's love Lafayette, love the family motto. One day I'll get it tattooed on my hand so that way I can look down on it as a reminder. But until that day happens, at least I know what it means.
Yes, and I often say exactly that. Like, why should I not pursue X, Y, Z? Like, what's the harm in it? You know, okay, so I fail at it. Big deal. We fail at the stuff that we love every day. You know, it's always a learning experience. So I love that. Why not? I'm gonna put a Post-it note on my computer that says why not. I like that.
It's a good question. I mean, we can come up with so many reasons as to like why should we, or why, like, what if this happens? And we never really ask ourselves like the other side of it, like why not just do it? Like what's the harm in it?
Yeah, and sometimes it's like, well, what's the worst that can happen? And if you've lived through bad situations before, well, you can live through another one, right?
Exactly.
I find that almost every single week, there is something in my life that I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, where did this come from out of nowhere? But then by the next week, I've forgotten about it. It's like, okay, that wasn't even really that big of a deal.
You know? Yeah, I mean, once it's in the past, it seems like it was nothing.
Right, exactly. So we can always make it through. Can you talk a little bit about a time where you didn't necessarily see the light at the end of the tunnel, and at the end of the day, you were able to bring that goal or that dream to fruition?
Oh, definitely. Okay, so it's not really much of a secret. I suffer with, general anxiety and social anxiety disorders. And I guess there's been a lot of talk about maybe I have bipolar disorder, or maybe it's just, major depressive disorder. There's always a huge thing to look for there. And I've gone through so many ups and downs of just not being able to see through anything. Like, where I remember in high school, we were discussing a book, and this one girl was like, well, there's always hope. And I remember sitting there like wanting to fight this girl on it, like argue with her about how, like, no, there's not everyone always has hope. You can't always see that stuff. It takes a lot more for some people to really push through it. And a few months ago, actually, I had a depressive episode, and it actually ended up getting me put in a hospital for 24 hours. And I just remember not knowing what I was going to do with myself, because I didn't like where I was. I didn't like what I was doing. I mean, I work with horses. I teach kids how to ride them. And, for the longest time, I had thought, this was what I wanted to do as a kid. I wanted to work with horses, and I accomplished that goal. And then all of a sudden I'm in this place almost a year out of my undergrad, and I didn't do exactly what I thought I would do. I didn't go study abroad like I had planned. I didn't get an internship. I didn't become the next, Asian American Ugly Betty like I had planned. And I was just like, all of a sudden, I had worked myself to the bone. I was working, sometimes 14 days in a row without any breaks. and I was exhausted, and the stress of work and the stress of trying to figure out what I was going to do. Like the next day, I would take 1 week of vacation, anything. It had gotten to me. And so I went to my therapist, and they got me put into a hospital for 24 hours. And I remember just going through that whole process, the people that I ended up meeting, just talking through things about how, maybe this isn't what I had planned for myself. This isn't what I wanted, what I had expected. It's where life brought me. And it took a lot of time and a lot of just talking to different people. Like one person that I met through that whole 24 hours, a kid 24 years old had decided that he was going to quit his job working as a psychiatrist assistant and was going to move in the next 2 weeks to Colorado and go and pursue his graduate degree and just go out there and see what would happen. He had one place lined up for a month-to-month rent, and he had no idea what else was going to happen. He was just going to find a job and try and make it work. And then I met another guy who was telling me, maybe you've been in one place too long. Maybe if it's not what you wanted, why can't you just make it work and go and change things? And I just talking through it with these people and realizing, a lot of people have it hard. There's a lot of different degrees and, varying severity of what people can handle. And really, I've been really fortunate in what I have and where I'm going. And I don't want to take it for granted. And, why not? What is honestly holding me back from all this different stuff? And it was like that 24-hour shock to my system of being like forcibly pulled out of my surroundings and having to talk to people about my problems that I realized, okay, so maybe I have these disorders that, affect how I function. And some days are worse than others, and it's hard for me to process certain thoughts. But what else is really holding me back from making that one change? I mean, I ended up after that, I bought myself a ticket to go to Nashville, and I made the 9-hour drive with a friend from Jacksonville, Florida to Nashville, Tennessee to go see Arctic monkeys. After that, I ended up buying another ticket to go to Washington, D.C. to go see them. And then after that, I bought myself a ticket to go see them in San Francisco because I've always wanted to travel. And I just kept holding myself back thinking, these are my responsibilities. This is what I have to do with myself. And then, when push came to shove, I was like, why am I depriving myself of doing what I want to do? Maybe it's not the trip to Paris that I thought I was going to have when I was in college, but at least this is the start. It's letting me get to a more comfortable place in my life where I can do these things and see how it's really possible for myself. So I have that, ticket for San Francisco in October, and I'm going to go see family that I haven't seen in 4 or 5 years. I'm going to go enjoy myself. The experiences that I had in Nashville and in DC were amazing. DC went a little haywire, but it ended up being like some of the best experiences of my life. So, I mean, after that, I really don't have an excuse for myself as to, why do I have to hold myself? Yeah, I have responsibilities. I can't just throw them off, but there's a way to balance that stuff.
Right.
And, one thing that I wanted to do when I was a kid, like come second grade, I told myself, I'm going to be a published poet. I didn't really do that. I have my degrees in English. I did a few writing classes. I had some professors tell me, well, you should try and shop your stuff around to see if you can get it published in like a literary magazine. Didn't take them up on those offers to help me with that. And now that I'm out of school and I don't have those resources at my fingertips anymore, I had to find a way to do it. So second grade me can be proud because I went and I found a collection of poetry that I wrote back in 2013, signed up on Amazon and self-published it myself. Had many buys or many views? Probably not, but at least I did it.
Yeah.
Because I don't have an excuse for myself. So really, what is holding you back? Why? Yeah. And then why not just go against it?
Yeah. And I think that the more good stuff that we add into our life, the more that we can tolerate when bad things, quote unquote, bad things happen to us. Because our life is just so full of the good things that bring us joy and fulfillment. I often say that you really don't know what you don't know. And the more that you can get out and experience new things, the more that you can see that sometimes the problems that you perceive as huge problems are not that big when you begin to compare it to some other things out there in the world. And also, you just gain a new perspective on how to be grateful and appreciative of what you have. And I discover that every single time that I travel out of the US to some countries that might not be quite as fortunate.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, we all sit and sometimes complain about, oh, the traffic, this and that, and my boss. And, you know, there's different things that people complain about. And that's not to say that we shouldn't ever complain, because that's completely human to do so. But sometimes I think we also lose perspective. Like, there's some people that are wishing they had a boss to complain about, you know, wishing they could sit in a little bit of traffic in the morning because they've been looking for a job for the last 3 years, you know? So I think that, you know, filling our life with good things allows us to experience a more full life, but also allows us to experience awesome experiences that change our mindset. Talk a little bit about your Pocahontas experience, because for some people that follow my blog articles on my Simplicity Health Style website, they probably remember a blog article that I posted about Pocahontas, and I'm totally for Pocahontas mindset. And what I mean by that is I'm totally in tune with people that choose to follow their intuition and their dreams, and in what some people call following their heart, because I believe that there's truth in following our intuition. And anytime that you step outside of that, your life may not feel as fulfilling. So will there be lessons along the way? Yes, but it might not feel quite as fulfilling to you. And you talked to me a little bit about the fact that you love Pocahontas as well. So can you talk a little bit about that to people that are listening?
Oh yeah. I mean, she is by far my favorite princess. I will argue anyone who wants to tell me she's not a princess. She's definitely on the Disney line. I have, my dog's name is Miko. I have a ton of Pocahontas merchandise, and if you ever go to Disney World and see a person with an orange lanyard with a bunch of Pocahontas pins, it is probably me. So she's my all-time favorite. I've loved her ever since I was a kid. She's still my favorite to this day, even though there's, you know, the nuance, not even necessarily nuance. Like, I understand the problem around her story being told by Disney nowadays, but I mean, at least from like my child perspective, that was the princess that was closest to me. And she's like, I don't understand how anyone could want to fight her message of at least listening to your heart and going with it, because I mean, we can step outside of the Pocahontas Disney story and just apply it in general to anyone else. I feel like when we try to fight ourselves on what we want, we end up getting stuck in those really terrible positions. You know, my father ended up in getting really lucky, and you know, without the college degree at the time, he ended up getting into the tech field, and he's been in it for the last 20 something years that I've been alive. And he loves his job, and he looks at me all the time. He's like, you know, you're very fortunate right now that you are doing something that you at least you enjoy, because there's a lot of people out there sitting in offices who hate their jobs and have to go through the 9 to 5 motion and are just miserable with it and live for those few hours after work where they have it to themselves, or the weekends, or whatever they have. And I kind of see that in my mother, who took the sacrifice to raise her kids and, you know, put her career on hold for us. And now she's back in the workforce, and her job isn't the most exciting. She tells me all the time about how she wishes she was like a dermatologist or something in that field. And it hurts to see that she is studying every night, having to work on her real estate exam and stuff like that, because it's what her current career is asking her for. And you know, when that applies to me, I'm like, okay, so I see the two different sides of it. My parents came from poverty and worked their way to what they have nowadays. And I don't know why I would, like, my parents sacrificed a lot for me. My goal is to at least be able to get to a point where I can give back to them. But right now, I did get lucky. I didn't have to do the standard internships and try to figure out what I wanted because I was already working with horses by the time I got into university. And I got to kind of just continue to pursue this passion. And yeah, sometimes it works me to the bone and I get exhausted, but at least like I followed my own passion. And at the end of the day, even when it sucks, I can go to the next day and realize that, I kind of like being outside more than I would have being stuck in a law office or something like that. So, it goes back to my favorite family motto out there. Like, why not? Why do we have to keep defining or confining ourselves to standard things that make us miserable?
Right.
I mean, is it really worth it to ignore what you really want for something that is just going to get you by on the daily? If it's easier said than done. If you really want it, you can make it work. And sometimes that means taking a huge cutback on something or making a big investment and putting yourself out there. But at the end of the day, if you really tried hard enough to pursue what you wanted, I would hope that makes someone feel better. And, if Pocahontas can do it and is still in the Disney parks and making kids smile to this day, then, why not give it a try?
Yeah. Yes. And you said something that is really key. If you chose not to go into the direction of following your intuition or your heart or your dreams, and then you chose to, what I call, settle for something less, and now you're feeling miserable about life, well, what kind of quality of life is that for you, but also for the people around you?
Yeah, because it affects you entirely, and other people are going to feed upon that.
Right. So you're having terrible days, and so then you begin to treat other people negatively, and then because you treated them negatively, now they go out and treat somebody else negatively. So I think that it's a ripple effect across the world in either direction. When people choose to follow their dreams and live a fulfilling life, that positivity radiates out there further than what we can imagine. And then the same goes for when we choose to not follow our dreams.
Yeah.
That negativity that we hold and that we communicate and transmit to other people also extends into the world.
Oh, yeah.
So we talk about the world being a better place. Well, a part of the world being a better place is us transforming ourselves and really doing what we're supposed to be doing on this earth that's purposeful and meaningful.
Oh yeah, and I mean, and big changes, like, they don't have to be huge steps. We can always, there are small pathways to get to it. I mean, it's not, quit your job.
Right.
You don't have to do that. If you do it, kudos to you. That's awesome. But, it's not for everyone. That's fine. I just, I think when we really get into it, because we see it on television all the time, is like people make these big changes.
Right.
And that's what takes them to it. And I feel like it's just ingrained in us that we have to learn to take the step back and that we can make the small changes, and that's still following your heart. It doesn't have to be huge.
Yes. And I often will tell people that sometimes it's just as much as 15 minutes a day doing something that really brings you excitement and joy.
Yeah.
And by the end of the week, those 15 minutes really add up. Then you look at the rest of the year, add those same 15 minutes up for 365 days in a year, and look at how much more fulfillment you brought to your life, as opposed to moaning and complaining and not taking steps in any direction.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't have to always be a huge step. I mean, you don't want to quit your job and now you're homeless because you didn't make the practical steps that are necessary to live a fulfilling life. So, it takes a little bit of wisdom too. Can you talk a little bit about your social media presence that is growing and the type of people that you would want to collaborate with?
Oh, definitely. Okay, so when I started the whole blogging experience and followed up with my Instagram page and all of my other social media things, it started because I had gone to Costa Rica for spring break, and the only way that I could communicate was through the internet. And instead of waiting up on different time changes, I just wrote blog entries, and I put it up on a private little blog, and I shared it with my friends. And that's how I communicated with them. And sometimes they would leave me comments, and that's how I interacted. And from there, I was in high school at the time, and I was like, okay, so this is, I wanted to be that published poet. I wanted to be a writer. I'm like, okay, so this was my little step towards it. So instead of trying to submit myself and get all those rejection letters and maybe not having any success at all, I took it into my own hands and did it. And then in high school, on the way to college, I just continued blogging. I started it with a friend, and then I went on to do it by myself. And my goal with it was just I've never committed to diary entries or journaling like that. It's too much for me to have to sit down and then fill up 1 or 2 pages with maybe nothing happened that day. But at least with the blogs, I could take it on my own time, and I would send out there, and maybe someone would read it, maybe someone didn't, maybe someone wanted to leave a comment, that's fine, and then I could interact with them. But really, it was just a way for me to take some time and reflect on something or try to work through something in a way that I felt like once I published it, it was out there. And It was out of my hands, and I had processed it, thought about it, put it into words that other people might be able to understand, and maybe someone would get something from it. Maybe I would get something from it, and discover something that my English degree helped me do, which was analyze words. And it's out there. So that's what I started. It was basically just a lifestyle blog is what I was doing. And when I say lifestyle, it just meant my life. So I was just processing things and working through, what a 20-something-year-old in this day and age is trying to do. So that's where the blog stuff started. And then my Instagram just kind of followed along. And I am not as well put together as other people. My job means that I spend most of my day in the same clothes every week because they're my barn clothes. They can get dirty, sweaty, disgusting, and then at the end of the day, throw them off, put them in the wash, and then they're ready for me next week. So I don't really have the time or necessarily the energy to go out and curate all these photos. When I do have those curated photos, it's because I went to an event and I had the day to myself to do something, and that's what I would do. And then I would have friends take pictures of me, and that's about as curated as I get. Everything else is just as it comes. Sometimes I get lucky and I just take a photo and I'm like, okay, this looks nice. I'll share it and put it out there and just have fun with it and leave a caption that is either, something about the photo or something that happened during that day or what I'm processing or what I'm doing. Just like a mini little bite of what my blog entries are like.
Right.
Just with a visual and updated more frequently because it takes a little less time than having to sit down and format a blog post and all that stuff. Right. So I am just trying to give a voice to 20-something millennials that have gone through university, have graduated with a bachelor's that doesn't hold as much significance as it used to, and having to process through the workforce with the plethora of mental disorders that are out there afflicting our youth today. And at least if I can process it and go through that stuff and put it out there, maybe someone will stumble upon it and be able to realize that they're not alone in this and that this is something that all of us are going through. So it was really just a way of processing my own stuff and then trying to connect with others and normalize it and make it seem like, no one's alone in this, because I've been through that, felt that way, and have always been super vocal about it. And at least it's doing something that I wanted to be doing in the first place.
Right. Yeah, and it definitely is normal. I used to work in a college career center, and I've interviewed plenty of millennials, and I'm just in a industry where I'm exposed to a lot of different people, and I'm also reading a lot about other people's experiences. And one of the things that people feel is that they're sometimes all alone in their experience. And sometimes that comes as a result of hopping on social media and you see everyone's highlight reel, and not enough people are talking about the challenges behind the scenes. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to put this YouTube and my podcast series out because I wanted for people to share their successes, but then also share their challenges for that reason. And I think that depending on your support system, it can be very easy to not really understand what other people are going through. And then when you go through something, you feel like you're all alone in it. I often find that if I'm going through something particularly challenging, I have enough close friends that I can turn to where I don't really feel like there's a strong urge for me to necessarily put all of my business out there into the public because I have those confidants. But I know that some people don't necessarily have a very strong support system, and all they're leaning on really is social media to connect with others, you know? So, you know, platforms such as this, interview styles like this, I've had several people tell me, oh, you know, I listened to so-and-so's interview and she said X, Y, Z. And because of that, I decided that I wanted to pursue my dream. And I realized that I wasn't the only one experiencing bipolar or depression or schizophrenia or whatever the mental health illness is. They realized, okay, this person looks just like me, you know, so and she seems fine. I can move through life too, you know. So I think that support is very key in us getting through the challenges that we're always going to face anyway. Talk a little bit about what some people that don't have a strong support system can do in order to gain more of a support system. So they're not relying on social media to be their therapist.
Right. And this is, I mean, there's somewhere back in my tweets and stuff, I had a conversation with one of my main, like, she's like my rock. We've known each other for over a decade now. We grew up together. But we actually had this conversation a little while ago because it is such a problem. Like, not everyone can go out there and is like, okay, I want to go see a therapist, or okay, I want to see a psychiatrist, or I'm going to set up this appointment, or I'm going to go and get counseling. And, you know, it doesn't work for everyone that way. And that's fine. That's totally fine. Like, the only thing that you really need to do is to set up a support system that is going to be there to catch you when you fall, or just help you back up. They don't even have to be there to catch you. Maybe that's what it takes for you, is you fall and what you need is someone to help you up. That's fine. Whatever works for some people. But a good place to start is look to your friends. Maybe family is not there to support you. That's totally fine. My family didn't necessarily understand what was going on with me. By the time I got out of high school, that's when they started to understand. And that's when I was already an adult and I was already, you know, finding different ways to cope. So I had my friends. I had 1 or 2, 3 friends. My cousin, who I'm closest to, you know, they already knew what was going on, and I was there talking to them. Anytime something happened, they already knew what was going on with me. So, you know, that worked for me for the longest time. That still works for me. I tried counseling. Counseling hadn't worked. You know, every person has their own thing. That's fine. But I encourage everyone to at least try and find a support team. And you're going to have to build that. So look to your friends. Right. If you're 1 or 2 friends, or maybe it's a whole group of friends that, you know, number 4 and 5, maybe you tell everyone a little bit of different things, whatever you're comfortable with. Find someone that you can at least trust to start building that relationship. There's a ton of resources. Maybe you don't have those friends around you. Maybe you've moved to another state and it's really hard to get a hold of someone across the country. Or maybe your family is hard to access and they're the ones that you're closest to. We'll try and set up a way to communicate with them and just find different ways that support within the relationships that you already have. Right. Now, if that's not feasible, there are tons of online resources. There's tons of local resources nowadays. If, you know, maybe it's just reaching out and talking to a counselor and establishing a relationship there, and at least building a little support team just by normal conversations. And that's your one person that you go to talk about things. Doesn't have to be a personal relationship. Totally fine. Maybe an anonymous online conversation or a phone call to a hotline is a good support way for you. There are so many different ways out there now that it's hard to find an excuse to cut yourself off from that. So, you know, for me, it always worked to have my closest friends around me, to be there to send them a text or to give them a phone call. And at least I knew that one of those 3 people would be there to respond back to me as quickly as possible, or be right there to pick up the phone. Right. You know, maybe that's the thing with a counselor. You just have to start reaching out a little bit. And if you know, messaging someone that you admire on social media,
Yeah.
you know, usually the smaller the channel, the better chance you have to access that person. But they're always there. If we don't take a chance to at least reach out and see who's willing to be a support, you're gonna keep swimming in that molasses and feel stuck. So the best thing that I can do, and of course there's the plane, the best thing I can encourage people to do is at least to just put feelers out there and see within your own relationships who is going to be there to support you. And you want to find someone that you're totally confident in and you feel comfortable with. And if that's not someone close to you, try a stranger. I always found too that talking to strangers in a library every once in a while was a great place to just talk to someone and be real with them, because you know at the end of the day that door is going to close, you're going to go home, and you'll never have to see them again. And you just gave your deepest, darkest secret, and you know that at the end of the day they're not going to think about it and tell a billion people and have it affect you again.
Right.
So there's a bunch of different ways to find support, and if anyone needs to, my DMs are always open. My email is always open. I'm easy to get a hold of. At least if that's out there, and I'll help anyone at least try and find support, or maybe start being a resource of support for them. So, I mean, just reach out. That's it. I mean, if you don't, if you know that there's someone in your life who seems a little reserved or something's going on, reach out to them, because the only way that a support system is going to grow is if it's reciprocated.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And I have found also that with social media, there's a way to use social media. I created a Facebook group a couple of years ago. And in that group, we started off just by talking about nutrition. It's called Nutrition for Busy Women. And anyone that's listening to this or viewing this, you have all the resources in the world in that group, because I'm all about just life empowerment in general. We don't just talk about nutrition from a food consumption standpoint. We're also talking about it from a mind, body, and soul perspective. And I focus really a lot on helping people to enhance their life purpose, and in some cases for people to understand themselves a little bit better so that they can begin to make career decisions and life decisions that are in tune with who they are aligned to be with. And what I mean by that is what things really light you up, so that if someone were to say, I wouldn't pay you for this, would you still do it? And chances are, if that's something that you would still do, even if someone wasn't going to pay you for it, then that's something that you need to think about pursuing. You can always monetize your passions. So we don't just talk about nutrition from a food consumption standpoint. We're talking about what is nutrition for your soul? What is your God-given gifts that you can utilize to bring more light into this world? So utilizing social media in ways that are going to enhance your mind by connecting with like-minded people is particularly helpful. I've had several people tell me things like, well, social media brings me down. Why is it bringing you down? Have you thought about why it's bringing you down?
Yeah.
What are the triggers that you're allowing it to bring you down? And are you using it in such a way that is benefiting you? And if it is bringing you down, well, what are you doing as far as developing your local support system? Because as you said, there's resources everywhere. There's really no excuse to say that I don't have any friends and anybody that I could talk to. Even if they're not, super close friends, you always have somebody to contact, even if it is a hotline.
Yeah, I mean, at least it's a voice
every day.
Exactly.
So I think the resources are there. Are you willing to step outside of your own fears and just establish relationships with people? Yeah, that's really what it's about these days. Is the world is like getting smaller and smaller. We can connect with people way across the world in other countries nowadays.
Oh yeah.
I've also found that when I do connect with people that are in other countries, I've had several people enrolled into some of my online courses, and we all find that we are all very similar. We just live in a different geographical region, but our desires are really the same. The things that frustrate us and overwhelm us are really all the same.
Yeah.
So there are people out there to connect with. You just have to be open to receiving those relationships. there anything else that you would like to share with us today before we close?
I guess not really. We've covered a lot. You can always, reach out to me, find my blog. It's where, I think my other usernames are like Cali Pollution. But I'm out there. It's CaliforniaPollution.com. My best friend and I are actually working on a podcast soon. She is a bereavement and lifestyle blogger as well.
Okay.
And we are going to be exploring a ton of topics that we usually go on about, which is dealing with like mental health and dealing with, being across the country and having to support each other in all these different circumstances that life throws at us, and then trying to navigate the world as 20-somethings and looking at the political climate of the world and having to figure out the economic climate as well. So there are a ton of different things that we're going to look at. We'll be posting updates on our social media and on our blog pages, but we are there, we're accessible, and that's about what I have in mind for projects right now. Yeah.
I love that. I feel like it's necessary for podcast platforms and, other type of platforms where we can discuss issues. And for those people that are constantly stuck in traffic, that's a great opportunity to listen to audiobooks or podcasts or what have you that will be uplifting to make that experience less painful. So there's always opportunities for self-development and self-awareness and self-improvement. And all of Alex's information, by the way, is in the description box. Her website and any upcoming events or upcoming forms of collaboration that she wants anybody to take part in will also be constantly updated in the description box as she allows me to know. So if you're interested in collaborating with her, as she said, it's as easy as sending her a direct message.
Oh yeah. Millennial, I'm on my phone all the time. You can always get a hold of me.
And I am as well. So if you need help in the areas of discovering what your life purpose is and how to enhance it, or if you needed help in anything that has to do with career development or health and wellness in general, I'm trained in both areas. And there are so many different resources that I can offer you that there is no way that you can float through this life and feel like you have no clue as to who you are and what your purpose is in this world. There's just too many resources out there, and I love it. So if you can't find it, I will help you find it.
There you go. And take advantage of those resources. That's why they're there.
Take advantage and utilize the information. That's the other thing.
Oh, yeah.
Utilize the information. I've taken courses before and come across information. I didn't do anything with it. So sometimes I think that we stop ourselves,
Oh, definitely.
Thank you so much, Alex. I really do appreciate you taking time out of your day, and I would love to be able to interview you in the future as you pursue other passions and develop into your craft as well, so that we can connect with you that way. And for anyone that's listening, if you have a similar story or you want to just share your own unique success story and challenges with the world, please reach out to me. I would love to have you communicate with others around the world as well. I strongly believe that we can all do this together. And everything seen in the site of collaboration happens. We can do so much more together than we can if we were to compete with each other. So I encourage you to empower other people by sharing your story as well. You guys, wherever you are in the world, just always remember to have a simple, meaningful, and purposeful life, and you will feel more fulfilled. I'll talk to you guys soon.